Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to the Sterling and Wilson Solar Q3 FY21 earnings call. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company, which are based on the beliefs, opinions, and expectations of the company as on date of this call. These statements are not guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Vishal Jain, Head of Investor Relations from Sterling and Wilson Solar Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Good morning. I welcome you all to Q3 FY21 earnings call. Along with me, I have Mr. Bikesh Ogra, Director and Global CEO, Mr. Bahadur Dastoor, CFO, and Strategic Growth Advisors, our Investor Relation Advisors. We will start the call with the operational highlights for the quarter by Bikesh, followed by financial highlights by Bahadur, post which we will open the floor for Q&A. Thank you, and over to you, Bikesh.
Thanks, Vishal, and a warm welcome to all the participants on this call. I'd like to give you a quick update on the impact of COVID-19 key addressable markets and followed by an update on our business operations for Q3 FY21. As I had mentioned earlier also, the project execution had got impacted in the first half of the year due to COVID-19, and the project execution has picked up across the geographies in H2. Our objective and priority continues to be focused around the safety and well-being of our employees, vendors, partners, and all the stakeholders in the value chain. We have been consistently taking utmost safety measures which are in strict compliance and in accordance with the guidelines laid by the respective countries. Our strategy to expand into developed markets of Australia and US have been bearing fruits. It has also shielded us, from geographical concentration risk. We now have a full-fledged management team in Australia and US to cater to these large markets. We are on course to complete our first major turnkey solar EPC project in Australia, which is a 200 megawatt solar plant for a customer LSVP by the end of next month. In the US, the potential of the market is enormous, and the top 4 to 5 EPC players having presence in that market can each bag orders worth $500 million each year. The positive changes in the U.S. government policies towards solar industry in terms of extension of tax credits until 2022, coupled with the government's focus on renewable energy, bodes well for the solar industry players. We are seeing a lot of traction in the U.S. market and expect to witness substantial order inflow from the U.S. market going forward. The Latin America market also remains an important market for us, and we will continue to focus in this market. During Q3, we had bagged an order worth 420 crores in Chile. As explained in the earlier call, the European market provides a good opportunity as we expect annual capacity addition of around 6 to 7 gigawatt over the coming years. To address this growing market, we have already set up a full-fledged management team at Sevilla, Spain. We are currently working on large number of potential bids and are confident of acquiring orders in the near term. Our aspiration is to become one of the leading solar EPC companies in this region as well. This surely has become a very promising market for us. Middle East market continues to remain challenging due to intense competition. Despite this, we have recently bagged 230 megawatt worth of order in Egypt, valued at 930 crores, which is obviously at an acceptable margin, which reiterates our commitment to remain relevant in the Middle East market. We have won this order from one of the leading global IPPs. This project is scheduled to be commissioned by Q1 2022. With this current win, our EPC portfolio has grown to a very significant 10,700 megawatts. We will continue to remain selective in bidding for projects in this region. At the same time, we'll be keeping a close watch on the execution capabilities for the large-size projects which has been won by our competitors. Solar projects along with energy storage and floating solar are also poised to grow substantially in the near future. We have a very strong team and technical partnerships to take up a leading role in these emerging technologies as well. On this note, we have recently emerged as lowest in one of the very large floating solar projects in India. On the solar plus energy storage dispatchable power projects, we have very recently participated in the bidding process for a large utility scale project in South Africa, for which the results will be announced very soon. With the storage prices further coming down, we see more of these kind of projects getting bid in the foreseeable future. Coming to operation and maintenance business, we currently manage around 8.1 gigawatt as our portfolio. We have acquired a substantial amount of third-party operation and maintenance business for India. On the international front, operation and maintenance market for those projects whose EPC was undertaken by third-party companies is expected to grow in the coming financial year. Our objective is to acquire an additional third-party O&M portfolio of at least 1 gigawatt each in domestic and international market for FY22. This obviously would be incremental to our regular self-EPC executed O&M business. I'm very happy to share that we have recently won our first O&M project outside India on a competitive basis in Oman. On the operational front, despite an extremely challenging business environment, we have seen healthy order inflows amounting to around 7,000 crores, which is higher than the last year restated order inflows. This includes a recently signed order for 230 megawatt solar plant in Egypt worth around 930 crores. We have LOIs for certain orders in India and America, which we will announce as soon as the orders are signed. Our gross unexecuted order value before adjusting for revenue post 31st December stands at 9,674 crores as of 12 Feb 2021. We expect majority of our current outstanding order book to be executed by end of next fiscal year, depending upon no further worsening of the COVID situation. Thank you. With this, I'll ask Mr. Bahadur, our CFO, to take you through the consolidated financial highlights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bikesh, and good morning. I will take you through the consolidated financials for 9 months ended December 31st, 2020. Before we run through the financials, I would again like to reiterate that the company revenue, order inflows, and gross margins could be lumpy due to geographical mix and stage of execution of the project in any particular quarter, and hence comparison on corresponding previous period will not be a true reflection of the performance for a quarter, and the performance may not be representative for that of a full year. Revenue for 9 months FY21 increased by 6% to 3,716 crores, driven by significant ramp-up in execution of projects in US, Latin America and Australia, leading to an improvement in revenue for Q3 FY21. The region-wise revenue breakup is as follows. Australia contributed 47.3%, Americas 21.8%, followed by India, which contributed 16.9%, MENA region with 12.2%, and balance 1.5% from Africa. O&M revenue increased by 37% to 180 crores in 9 months FY21 compared to 132 crores in 9 months FY20, with an EBIT margin of 36.9%. O&M business contributes 4.8% of revenue in 9 months FY21 as compared to 3.8% in 9 months FY20. At the company level, the gross margin witnessed a decline to 8% in 9 months FY21 due to unprecedented increase in commodity and logistics costs, as well as higher execution costs in developed markets due to COVID and labor movement restrictions. Due to these factors, we expect gross margins for the year FY21 to be in the range of 9 to 10%. Based on the expected geographical mix of UAE at the end of March 21 and the stage of execution of projects, we expect the gross margins for FY22 to normalize again in the range of 10 to 11%. Overheads in 9 months FY21 reduced by 51 crores to 240 crores due to right sizing and cost optimization measures undertaken. Our overheads as a percentage of revenue reduced from 8.3% in 9 months FY20 to 6.5% in 9 months FY21 and will go down further in the next year. Additionally, there has been forex and mark-to-market loss amounting to 47 crores in 9 months FY21, primarily comprising of 24 crores reinstatement on loans given to overseas subsidiary and branch, which is in the nature of an equity contribution, and rupees 26 crores on account of mark-to-market loss on forward contracts relating to projects yet to commence or in early stages of commencement. EBITDA and PAT for 9 months FY21 stood at 43 crores and 54 crores respectively. Coming to other comprehensive income, the group had taken forward contracts, including cross-currency hedges, to hedge the exposure of currency fluctuation in respect of receivables from customers, trade payables, and letter of credit relating to a project in the initial stages of execution. The Australian dollar INR derivative contracts were taken for receivable from customers, and Australian dollar to US dollar and US dollar to INR derivative contracts were taken for trade payables and letter of credit payments. The strengthening of the Australian dollar has resulted in the other comprehensive income having a mark-to-market loss on a notional basis of about 175 crores. On utilization of forward contracts on the date of maturity, the effective portion of the cash flow hedge reserves previously recognized in other comprehensive income will recycle to profit and loss account, which will be offset by increase in revenue due to restatement of receivables for that particular project. Coming to the balance sheet, I would again like to reiterate, as per the amended Articles of Association, the company cannot give loans to promoters or their affiliates post-listing. The external term debt outstanding as on February 12, 2021 is 332 crores. This is after debt of 457 crores paid during the current year to date. Since listing last year, we have repaid a total of 2,179 crores through internal accruals and money received from group companies on collection of intercorporate deposits. The repayment schedule of external debt over the next 2 quarters involves a payment of 213 crores in Q4 FY21, for which we are in discussion with banks, and balance 119 crores payable in Q1 FY22. We have a cash and cash equivalent of approximately 329 crores and a net worth of 951 crores as on December 31, 2020. The total intercorporate deposits due, including interest, stood at 1160 crores as at 12th of Feb, which, as mentioned by the promoters, will now be paid latest by September 30th, 2021. Quarterly interest on ICDs has been serviced in keeping with the promoter commitment. Our net debt to equity as on December 31, 2020 is 0.6x. As of December, we had a negative net working capital of 35 crores as compared to a positive net working capital of 178 crores as on March 2020. On the cash flow front, during 9 months FY21, we had a net operating cash flow of 104 crores as compared to 119 crores for 9 months FY20 and 338 crores for FY20. Cash flow from operations and investing activities has been used to repay borrowings and interest thereon. Receivables due for more than 1 year as at December 31, 2020 stood at 549 crores. This includes amount due from a customer under NCLT of 71 crores net of provisions. It also includes 133 crores from a customer in Argentina, and we are working closely with the customer and lender to the project and have already recovered 27 crores during 9 months FY21. We are also discussing with the customer regarding waiver of LD imposed on the company, as the LD imposed on the customer has already been completely waived off. We have made adequate provision for liquidated damages as per our best estimates. Receivables due for more than 1 year from related parties amounts to 216 crores. Receivables due for more than a year has increased from 455 crores as at March 2020 to 549 crores as at December 20. Increase is primarily on account of the amount due from related party as explained above. However, we have been able to collect 157 crores, that is 35% of amount due for more than 1 year as at March 2020. The company is confident of collecting the balance overdue receivables in due course. As you all would be aware, Shapoorji Pallonji and Company Private Limited, the holding company, has applied for a one-time restructuring facility which has impacted our ability to fully utilize our existing banking limits and or obtain fresh banking limits and rollover of the existing facilities. As a result, subsequent to 31st December 2020, the company is facing challenges relating to obtaining funding for cash out in respect of timely repayment of borrowings, raising of fresh non-fund limits, and other activities. This is expected to impact our annual revenues for FY21 from what was earlier envisaged. and we expect to close the year with the revenue in the same range as last year. We understand that banks would be willing to support us once the OTR for PCPL is approved over the next 2 months. With this, we can now open the floor to questions and answers.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Anand Lala from Edelweiss. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Sir, thank you for giving a brief update, specifically on the different markets. My question is related to primarily all the geography. So if you could just give me an update. So what I've also seen when you gave the geographical mix, as we know, the order book mainly comes from Australia, and we sounded very bullish and optimist on the US markets as well. So how do in the current order book as we stand, the large order comes from Australia. How do you see that market panning up? And if we are so optimistic on the US market as well, do we see the change in the mix of orders coming from incremental orders coming from US as well? Plus, also, sir, on the Spain side, if my memory serves me right, we have also opened an office in Spain. So if you could also give some idea on that market as well as the entire European market. Plus, what I heard correctly, I'm sorry, the voice was not clear. So I think there will be no revenue growth. We'll be doing the same revenues this year as last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you could, sir, as we know that the execution period, the current order book would be anywhere between around 10,000 crores. And the execution takes around 12 to 18 months. So if can you give some idea, if possible, on the revenue guidance for the next year, and also on some estimate on the margin side, how the margins will look?
So I'll this is Bikesh. So I'll first answer your question on the Australian and the US market. So yes, this year we have been, we have had a substantial chunk of our order book and revenues coming in from the Australian market, and this trend will continue for the coming years as well, because now we have established ourselves as one of the leading EPC players in that market. Next year for Australia, we would be bidding in for anywhere between 1.5 to 2 gigawatts worth of bid. In the US market, like I mentioned, we have started seeing good traction in the markets there. We have had a couple of years wherein we did a lot of understanding of the market to understand the landscape. And the North American market, we will be bidding for a pipeline of around 3.5 to 4 gigawatts. And we are targeting to win anywhere between 500 to 700 megawatts in the US market as well. So that answers your question, on Australia and the US market. In terms of our office opening in Spain, we have now set up a very strong and robust management team there, as I explained earlier. And the European market primarily for us comprises of, utility scale markets, which is in Spain, Portugal, Eastern European market and Greece. And that will give us a total pipeline of around 3 to 3.5 gigawatt, next year to bid in. And we are targeting to, acquire an order book of around 500 megawatts. So this is primarily about the outlook that we're looking for the next year. In terms of the revenue, as Bahadur mentioned, owing to various constraints on the banking and OTR, we will be clocking a flat revenue this year. However, for the next year, we are very, very confident that we will be achieving a growth of around 30%. And more, going by the current order book and what we see foreseeable pipeline that we have. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, and sir, any guidance on the margin front also, because there have been cost savings as well. So can we see an improvement there?
See, on the margin front, Bahadur did mention that we will be marginalizing, it between 10 and 11% band. And on the operating side, there will be a leverage because we are doing a lot of cost optimization and right sizing on the overhead. There would be a definite, leverage that we can get on the operating side. We will be able to guide you on that, in our Q4 call as to exactly what is the kind of leverage that we get on the operating side.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ritesh Gandhi from Discovery Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi. So, you guys had earlier indicated that a lot of the kind of costs are actually passed through for actually kind of customers. So just wanted to understand the reason then for the impact on gross margin. I mean, shouldn't we be able to pass that on to our, customers?
I think if my recollection serves me right, the costs passed through were primarily on account of the modules, the PV modules. And we continue to, on most of the projects, on a long gestation projects, the BOP costs, which is the cost of the commodities, the logistics, the shipping, transportation, the costs are on us. The volatility on the costs are on us. So that is where we got impacted because of an immense, surge in the commodity price, the logistics price, because of the COVID situation on, the condition at ports and stuff like that. So therefore, that cost is, not attributable to the customer. Only the cost of the PV modules is what is attributable, as a part of the customer.
Additionally, if you see, there has been a duty reduction in the prices of steel, copper. However, since most of the imports are from free trade zone agreements, we have actually seen that the commodity prices have gone up and they have not seen a reduction, even though duties have come down from 12.5 to 7.5.
Got it. Understood. And the other question was, obviously because of the promoter issues, there's an inability to actually kind of be awarded incremental contracts because of our BGs and all. I'm assuming we would have to give to kind of qualify, and there could be potential impacts from clients who are questioning our overall balance sheet and solvency, given effectively the qualifications in the audit report. So, and given historically over the last few years, we haven't been able to achieve either our revenue gross margin, actually kind of guidance, nor effectively with regards to the payback of effectively the loans. What is giving us the confidence that the next year is going to be a huge growth year of 30% plus, especially given actually the OTSs and all can occasionally take significantly actually longer than is expected, and historically we haven't been particularly accurate in our assessment of the promoter level issues and I mean the consequences on us.
So I'll answer some of the questions and then Bikesh will take over the rest. First of all, the balance sheet is strong, but it is banking support that is required, and that has proven to be a challenge more from SP going in for an OTR rather than the promoter issues as far as the loans. The loans are actually, if you see our term loans, they've actually come down by over 400 crores from where we were in March. A lot of it is also due to internal accruals of the company. We expect the SP OTR to be cleared in another 2 months. We have explained that in great detail in the investor presentation as well. Once this is out of the way, we expect the banks to support us again, because on a standalone basis, the business model is strong. So as of right now, and Bikesh will add to that, we do not see customers questioning our bank guarantee raising abilities, because we have given all bank guarantees required to date. The issue for the flat turnover is more letters of credit, which have to be opened expeditiously, because if they are not opened by, let's say, February end, and there is a lot of transit time, for the materials to reach places like Latin America and Australia, we find that we will have an impact on the revenue, which will then overflow to the next year. Vikesh, if you would like to add anything.
No, Bahadur, I think you have mentioned it all, but the only thing I'd like to add here is the continued faith and trust of our customers, and which is very evident from this order which we have recently bagged in spite of having a very stiff time, which I believe is a passing time for us. A couple of months we will be through with it. We are still having the faith and trust from the customers in terms of our execution capabilities, in terms of our bankability, in terms of our balance sheet. And we strongly feel that, next couple of months, once we are through with this issue of OTR, the banking fraternity will support us, unflinchingly, and we'll be able to achieve what we have just now mentioned in terms of our growth on the order pipeline and the business acquisition.
All right, thanks. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anuj Jain from Globe Capital. Please go ahead.
Very good morning to all of you. Sir, my question is primarily on the margin front. First of all, as we have booked majority of our 9 months revenue from Australia region, and in the earlier calls we have guided that we have better margins with Middle East region in the Australia and US market. So I just want to understand that just now Bahadur sir has said that for this year margin guidance here, they have said like 9 to 10%, and for the coming year it could be again normal 11 to 12%. So why is it the same range of margins which we were enjoying earlier when we have major share in the Middle East region, whereas now we have better revenue visibility in terms of Australia and US region? So can you please give some color on the same?
Yeah, so it is actually the Australia revenues which are getting pushed back into the next year because of the potential LC issues, which is what is impacting our overall margin. Otherwise, we would have caught up in quarter four, and we would have achieved what we had set out to achieve. The Australia as an entity continues to have great margins. It's only that those revenues are getting pushed into the next year.
So for the whole year, you have said that gross margin would be in the range of 8 to 9 or 9 to 10%.
9 to 10.
9 to 10%. So we can see some major kind of re-rating in terms of margin in Q4. Is it right?
Yes. So margins will not be majorly re-rated. It would see, if you see right now, your gross margin is at about 8.7%. So we expect the margins of Q4 to be in the range of 10%, which will give us 10.5%, which will give us anywhere between 9 to 10% as the annual gross margin.
Hello?
Hello? Did you hear my answer?
No, sir. No, please.
So I said in Q4, the gross margins would be in the range of 10 to 10.5%, which will give us gross margin of 9 to 10% for the entire year.
Okay. And for the next year, what we can assume?
I have already mentioned in my speech that it would be again rated back to 10 to 11%, because we will be done, and most of our Australia revenues will now be there in the next year, which are at significantly higher margins.
So it might get re-rated also, what you are saying of 11 to 12?
We would right now like to project 10 to 11%. Of course, we will strive to optimize margins as much as possible.
Okay. And in terms of the cost side, which you have said that you have mentioned in the investor presentation about the aluminium, copper and material prices. So majorly we got impacted by the logistic cost, right? Because in terms of material prices, we can pass on in terms of the that module prices. That is a factor in. So we got impacted by the logistic cost. Is it right?
No. So modules is a pass-through, but when we are saying commodity prices, we don't mean modules. We were talking about copper and steel, which go into cables, go into the structures. Those are what we call balance of plant costs. Those are not passed on to the customer. So we were impacted by logistics cost as well as commodity pricing, not being modules.
Okay. Now I have heard on the ground that now the logistic issues have been sorted out to some extent, which were there in the December month or early January. So is it right to assume that going forward the impact would be less on the material and logistics side? Is it right to assume?
So I will just give my point of view and Bikesh will again add further. There could be a softening of pricing after the Chinese New Year or maybe in the first quarter of FY22. As of right now, we have factored in the hit that we believe would come in on the basis of the increased pricing. Bikesh, if you would like to add anything from pricing point of view.
Yep. So, Bahadur, the point that you tried to make as an extension of the point, we are definitely looking at softening of these prices. Basis the fact that there was a lot of congestion at the ports because of the COVID and restricted movements, and that congestion has started to ease out on various ports, and therefore we would definitely see a softening of these prices as we have understood from the market in another couple of months. And the commodity prices also post the Chinese New Year is what is assumed to be getting softened. So what you said, Bahadur, is absolutely right. So we will definitely see now it getting marginalized in the next couple of months.
Okay, sir. Thank you. That's it from my side. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dixit Doshi from Whitestone Financial Advisors. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So first question is regarding the SP Group's OTR. So you mentioned that, we are seeing a letter of credit issue and that impacts our execution. I wanted to understand, let's say, if that issue does not get resolved in next couple of months, apart from letter of credit, how it can impact our new order book? I mean, let's say whatever bank facility or BG we have as of now, what kind of order book we can scale up from 9,000 crore to what level we can do?
So the bank guarantees are required to be given at the time of the notice to proceed and not at the time of the signing of the contract. As far as the OTR for SPCPL is concerned, it is a process that is happening for the first time and there are various complexities. All the banks there have already signed the intercreditor agreements and the details of the plan are in discussion. And what we have been informed is that it should be over in the next 2 months. So as of right now, we do at any point in time have between 5 to 10% of our non-fund limits available. We are hopeful that this will tide us over the crisis till the time the SP OTR issues are resolved.
Okay. And second, in terms of this cost escalation, so obviously the freight rates moving up and the container unavailability, I understand. But in terms of commodity prices, so don't we hedge back to back when we receive the order?
We do financial hedging. We do not do commodity hedging because that is something that keeps fluctuating at all points in time. So far we have not been doing commodity hedging.
But are we planning, looking at such sharp fluctuations recently, are we planning to hedge commodity also back to back or?
See, it is a difficult proposition, though it is not being completely ruled out because we are not a manufacturer. So generally commodity hedging would be more suitable for your manufacturers. However, as a matter of policy, we are looking at options of how to do commodity hedging. So far, we are seeing that it is a 2-3 month phenomenon, but we will come out with a policy on this.
Okay. And sir, the last question from my side on, so now almost 75% of order book is in US and Australia. So due to COVID or any other issue, are we seeing any execution impact over there? In terms of labor or anything, or now it's more or less back to pre-COVID levels?
Yeah, so I'll answer this question. So I would not say it is more or less back to pre-COVID levels. There are border movement restrictions still in Australia, but we still have been able to manage the resources and the execution in Australia as well as in Chile, which is Latin America per se, which has been our front market for the revenue this year. US also, wherever we are executing the project, we are, having not much of difficulty in mobilizing the labor for resources for the execution of the projects. As the vaccination picks up, surges, I think we would be reaching the pre-COVID levels, I would assume, in the first quarter of next year, and the execution would definitely get more easily facilitated.
Okay. That's it from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shivan Sarvaiya from JHP Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello. Good morning, sir. Couple of questions. So one is on the so you're foraying into floating solar and into storage. So sir, if you could give some idea on the competition there in the global markets and in India, and how do you see our margins moving due to this foray? As in, would it yet remain in this 9 to 11%, or there is, because this is a newer field in this particular in solar, you could have a higher margin there?
No, so when you talk about the competition would be the same as we see in the EPC space, right? I think it is on an incremental value add that we are trying to build in. Obviously, we have to build in the capabilities and competencies to be able to do the floating solar as well as the storage-based technologies. We won't see much of a margin shift in terms of incremental, accruals on margins basis, the competition being the same. But obviously, you'll have to build in the competencies, which along with us, there are a lot of other EPCs who are also building the competency. But then there will definitely, on the upside, there will be definitely a large scope for the floating solar, going forward, as well as for the storage plus solar-based, projects, not only in India but globally also, because of the fact that the storage prices and the battery prices have been coming down, exponentially, and therefore there will be a lot of dispatchable power projects which would get bid for in the foreseeable future. As I mentioned earlier, one of the large utility scale projects that we have bid in recently is in South Africa, wherein there will be around the clock dispatchability, for the projects, and that would be continuing to come in from other countries as well.
Okay. And sir, in terms of the competition currently in Australia, Europe, and America, if you could give some color there, are the Chinese as dominant as they are in the MENA region?
We haven't seen a major competitive landscape from Chinese in the Australian market. The US market, obviously, we don't have any Chinese EPCs. In Latin America, we do face them once in a while, not as much as they are in the Middle East. So primarily, to answer your question, we see a lot of competition coming in from the Chinese EPCs in the Middle East market, and a sporadic once in a while competition coming from them in the Latin America market. But in Australia, we have seen only one or two projects wherein the Chinese module manufacturers are also participating as EPCs, only one or two projects. Barring that, we haven't seen majorly any Chinese competition in any other parts of the globe.
Okay, so in continuation to this, in the last con call, you had said that the Chinese do not like to or are not interested in bidding in projects which are less than 500, 600 megawatt, and they are interested only in the larger projects. So my question was that once these markets like Australia, Europe, and America mature, and even in those markets there is a 1,000 megawatt plus kind of projects that start coming in. Do you see them coming in a big way, the way they have come in the MENA region?
I think you have to also appreciate the fact that there is a grid limitation in terms of the large size projects that get synchronized with the grids. In say Europe, one is the grid limitation, the other one is the land availability. You can't be having a 500 megawatt single location project in Europe anywhere. You will not have that. The maximum capacity that we can go, that it can go up to maybe the 100, 150 or a 200 megawatt. And that's also very scarce and very rare. Likewise, in the Australian market also, there are very, very few projects which are upside of the 200 megawatts because of, again, the grid limitations and the grid absorption capabilities. In the Latin America, again, you will have 100, 200 megawatts. We haven't seen, barring very, very few projects, we haven't seen projects in excess of 200 megawatts. And for the US markets, I think there is a definite pushback for the Chinese, which we hope will continue. And there also the project sizing is around 200 to 300 odd megawatts. So effectively, I think the only place wherein we see a large capacity single location project coming up is in the Middle East, as I mentioned in the last version. I continue to have that view, unless there is some dramatic change in the complete grid, feasibility of these countries.
Okay. So apart from the size of the project being a deterrent to the Chinese players, in terms of our business model, how is our business model different from those Chinese players? So that I'm trying to just understand how we are going to be able to guard our margins if there is a possibility of rampant competition by whoever wants to come in those regions. And we don't face something similar to what we faced in the MENA region.
No, if you look at our earlier order revenue, forecast, we were focused around 2 or 3 regions or 2 or 3 countries, which had created a lot of concentration risk for us. Now, with us being present in 26 countries and our reliance on the MENA region, as I had mentioned earlier, and we keep on mentioning that we are definitely not as much reliant on the MENA region as we were in the past, that has given us that hedge against the margins, against the projects, and against the concentration. So we are very, very confident that, because we have now spread across so judiciously across the globe, we will not face any, major risk on our margins. And there is a clear hedge against the concentration that we earlier had a threat of.
Okay. So, and one last question. So the LC issue that is there currently, you said that the Australia revenues could get pushed into the next year. Is there a risk of any delays on our part which will lead to any penalties being imposed on us because of this on our ongoing projects?
I don't see that risk at the moment. We are still slightly in the comfort zone. The question for the LCs really is about timing, because right now the Chinese New Year, and there is a 30-35 day transit time from China to Australia. In case the materials don't reach on time, we will lose revenue for the year. So even if the LCs are opened 15 days later than what they are, we could see March 31st passing through. However, that timeline does not impact the project timeline. It impacts the revenue.
Okay. Thank you very much and best of luck.
Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Devam from Ardeko. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello sir. If you could just share what would be the rough percentage impact of or contribution of aluminium, copper, steel and freight in our cost structure?
So if you talk about the balance of plant, it all depends on from country to country. It varies anywhere. I'm talking about balance of plant, which obviously includes the steel, the copper, the aluminium, the logistics cost, which will vary anywhere between, on an overall project pie, it will vary anywhere between 20 to 25%.
You are saying all of these combined, I mean all these 4 components, aluminium, copper, steel and freight, will be 20 to 25%
yes.
of cost of balance of plant.
Yeah.
So you would have seen...
No, not the balance of plant, for the overall pie. Suppose 100 is the cost of the project, 20 to 25 would be the cost of all of these components.
So firstly, when we come to 4Q margins, I heard the management highlight that 4Q margins would come back to around 10% level. So how confident are we of this? Because given that I think this commodities remain disrupted and this contract prices would have been in place much before. So with regards to 4Q as well as FY22, how will gross margins quickly revert unless you start hedging or unless you take some other intervention?
So the first point is that the Q4 will include a lot of Australia, which also overflows into the next year. So those are at a higher margin as compared to the projects that we have completed so far. Of course, Q3 also included Australia to a great deal, but the large margin projects are those which will come in the current quarter and in the next year. And that's the reason, and we have taken most of the impact of the increased logistics costs on our ongoing projects and adjusted our margins. Of course, if there is a significant movement again, it could possibly happen. We do not think that is so probable at the moment, but we will know once the Chinese New Year comes to an end. If Mr. Ogra would like to add something, he could do. Yes, please. Sorry, I interrupted you.
So I was just talking of the, let's call them the legacy orders, the orders which were taken before this commodity moves or this freight moves happened. So that would still be excluding the Australian order of new orders, like let's say new orders are still flowing through right now. Excluding those orders, still a predominant part of the order book would be lying in those legacy stages, right?
Those legacy orders are all coming to a close now. So the newer orders, like for example in Chile, will commence or has slightly commenced already February, March. We have factored in the commodity pricing already in that margin. Australia also, the ones which were legacy have almost come to an end. The new ones are the ones taking off with the higher margins.
Yeah, because so we can be very confident of the fact that if, let's say, the environment around these commodities and freight remains more or less stable or around current situation, then you should be able to see margins of 10% coming back in 4Q as well as FY22. That's what you...
Yes.
And on the funding side, basically we see that because of the OTR related challenges, banks we are facing challenges in utilizing our existing limits as well as obtaining fresh limits. So, that would mean that basically a lot of our activity would be curtailed and we might, like what you mentioned, that our FY21 revenues and performance might be hit. But how, because the OTR for Shapoorji is a moving thing, right? Like you mentioned, there are a lot of complexities. So the best case is that it concludes in 2 months. But if it's, let's say, stretches further, it could even impact our FY22. Is that understanding correct?
We don't expect it to go beyond 2 months. But were it to go beyond 2 months, in any event, we are in discussions with banks. So to answer your question directly, if it goes through further, it all depends on our individual discussions with each bank and the comfort that they draw from the business model. Else, there could be a possibility that there is a disruption there.
And given the fact that what you highlighted, you guys have a very strong balance sheet at the company level. So
yes.
Is it possible for a lender to take a call directly on the company's balance sheet rather than go down into the group's complexity?
So we are part of the Shapoorji Group, so there is something called the group borrowing limit, which all banks are governed by. So they do look at that. Until the OTR is settled, this overhang will remain because we are part of the SP Group.
Okay, sure. That's my question.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dhruvesh from Prospero Tree. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Most of the questions have been answered, but this one part, in terms of, let's say when we keep hearing the news related to the setup of solar plants, many new players are coming and, also giving a very aggressive guidance. For one, there is Tata Projects, which is talking about already having installed capacity of 4 gigawatts, thinking to reach to 20. Let's say if all these issues continue with us for 6 to 12 months more, will it not weaken our position permanently in the market? If you can throw some light from a 4 or 5 year angle.
So I think, like you said, the questions have been answered. We have a very strong fundamentals as a business model, and considering our footprints and our reputation and the delivery capabilities and the way we have grown globally, I think we are very, very confident that this 10.7 gigawatt, which is 10,700 megawatt, in the next 7 to 10 years can easily be scalable to around 40 to 45 gigawatts. And therefore, we don't really see a major challenge in terms of, the growth. Yes, we are running through an overhang. There is a OTR issue which we are grappling with. And like what Bahadur mentioned, we are mostly through with the processes of the OTR, and next 2 to 3 months is when we will see that everything gets formalized and we are back to normal, and it is business as usual. So the growth potential for us is phenomenal. When you mentioned about Tata, obviously a great company, they have majorly a local presence, which is in India. They are not as global as of now as we are, and therefore, our growth potential to grow the market and scale up is quite phenomenal in comparison to most of the other solar EPCs that are present in India.
One follow-up on there, sir. Suppose, though Tata Projects would be local in India, but there will be each local player in each country, and I'm not arguing, I'm just trying to understand that because ultimately even they can get the panels from China and install it in South Africa or in Middle East or in Australia, etc. And maybe they will learn from your model and emulate. That is how most businesses try to flourish eventually. And therefore probably your margins and all the questions related to margins are coming from that angle. And though your guidance is more coming from this 8, 10, 11% coming from an angle of existing orders, but what most people would like to understand your thoughts are, how does the margin shape up? Let's say even if our business doubles and if the margins go down by 2-3%, we are back to level where we are today. Some thoughts around that, please.
No. So definitely, I think if you look at our complete footprint and more specifically the Middle East, we definitely could have picked up another 2 to 3 gigawatts of the projects here, and the margins would have been anywhere between 5 to 7%. But we have, and the customers prefer our selection as an EPC because we have a proof of concept, delivered projects here, on budget in time. But the fact of the matter is we definitely, did not opt for those projects because that doesn't fall in our margin profile. And the fact, again, is that we are now opening our newer avenues in terms of US, Australia, and European markets, which gives us a better margin profile and obviously would keep us, in terms of, up to the speed in terms of the growth aspiration that we have. So therefore, we do not definitely focus only on the revenue. It is also on the quality of the project, the margin profiles, and also the fact that today, when you talk about people emulating us, I think we must also appreciate the fact that today Sterling Wilson has been a global EPC player from the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years. Every market has got its nuances. Every market has got its complexity into enter. We took almost 2.5 to 3 years to enter into Australian market to understand the landscape, to get an acceptance from the lenders, because these are all projects which are project funded, not balance sheet funded. So you need to have the lenders go ahead. You need to have an understanding of the landscape. You need to have the understanding of the grid situation. Likewise, in the US also, it has taken us 3 years to really establish ourselves as an EPC player, and now only we are getting acceptance from the customers. Europe also, we have been, one is that we have been trying to understand that market from last 1 year. The second is that there are these global IPP players who are having presence in all of these geographies, and we have a network and a relationship with all of them. So they would definitely, and having executed projects with them in, say, Australia and US. Now, once there's a project which comes in Europe, they know that we have a credible partner in Sterling and Wilson. They would definitely want to work with us because they have negotiated contracts with us. We know their way of working. They know our way of working. It becomes a much more accelerated process rather than reinventing the whole wheel by getting a new EPC in and from a different country, having not worked with him. So the process is a bit complex because of the timeline that it involves. And I'm not saying that people will not come in. So there's enough room for people, even if they come in, enough room and enough space, enough business available for people, even if they come in. But it takes some amount of time for any EPC or any company to really establish themselves in any other region or any other country.
Fair enough. And one bookkeeping side, can you, in a short summary, there is some X amount of money outstanding for more than 1 year for a non-related. I think it is related to the Morocco project and one more. If you can explain, generally what we have seen that whenever such thing happens, there has to be some kind of write-downs or bad debts kind of a situation. So where are we standing there, and by when this will be completely out of the books, either in the form of provided or money coming back?
So we have made liquidated damage provisions wherever it is required. We also have claims on those customers. Some of those claims would include an interest element if that goes on. So there is no expected credit loss provision which is anticipated at the moment. Having said that, we are in discussions with, and it is less Morocco, it is more Argentina that we are talking about. We are, as I have mentioned, in discussion since their LD is completely waived for them to release our entire funds. However, this could extend till the end of this particular calendar year. I would let Bikesh add further if I have missed out anything here.
No, so Bahadur, you're right. So to your point, I think these are sticky outstandings, and if you would have noted, we have collected a portion of these outstandings in this year. Around 27 crores we have already collected from Argentina project, and like what Bahadur mentioned, the LDs which were earlier imposed by the utility on our customer have been totally waived off. Now we are in discussions, advanced stages of discussion, I would say, with the customer in order for us also to get exempted from those LDs. The discussions are ongoing. I won't be really giving you an exact and definitive timeline, but I believe it may take, like what Bahadur mentioned, before this year, and it may slightly get stretched into Q1 also. But we surely envisage that by Q1, we would be able to give a definitive conclusion on this particular outstanding.
What is the number with the Argentinian customer pending after providing for whatever losses?
The figure is 130 crores.
Okay. Thanks a lot, sir. And best
also mentioned in our investor presentation. We thought it would be good to keep the market updated, on the position.
I mean, I might have missed it.
No worries. I'm just drawing your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Noel Vaz from Ashika Stock Broking. Please go ahead.
I think all my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Good to hear.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the last question for today. The next question is from the line of Shashwat Tandon from Shashwat Textiles. Please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, sir. I wish to know that like Tata Power you have mentioned is also a great company trying to expand very aggressively. Are we also looking to do some projects for the government of India when they come up after this big scale union budget? Are we looking to do projects in India?
Absolutely. We are an Indian based EPC. We have a large portfolio of projects available in India, and we continue to take pride in the fact that we will be associated with the government of India's thrust towards the solar, and we will want to contribute as much as possible to the growth of the solar landscape in India. So definitely there is no doubt that we will want to bid continuously for all the projects that come up for the EPC portfolio in India.
Secondly, sir, a small question. All this talk about the freight rates having multiplied by for goods being shipped from China. What does it turn out to be a cost per megawatt increase? And I mean, there will be a fraction, right? But
no, it is not a fraction. See, it all depends on which country. Now, the freight between, say, China and, say, Vietnam is much less than the freight between China and Chile, or China or Australia, or China to, say, US. So it all depends on country to country as to how much is the distance it has to traverse in order to determine the freight rates. So earlier, what we used to pay $750 per container, just to give you a perspective of numbers. So if we used to give $750 per container for any shipment to come in from China into India, now the same container costs us around $3,500 to $4,500. And each megawatt, to just again give you a perspective on the containers per megawatt, each megawatt has around 6 containers.
Okay.
So the cost is significant. If the country is the proximity between China and the respective country is small versus the proximity is large, then the container freight rates also accordingly increases.
Okay. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Bikesh Ogra from Sterling and Wilson Solar Limited for closing comments.
Thank you. The opportunity for solar power industry will continue to remain buoyant, as we said earlier, and grow at a very rapid pace over the next 2 to 3 decades. Most of our clients are looking at significant capacity additions, and we continue to remain confident of the opportunities going ahead. I am hopeful that we have been able to address all your queries. For further information, kindly get in touch with Vishal Jain or Strategic Growth Advisors, our investor relation advisors. Thank you once again and have a great day.
Thank you. On behalf of Sterling and Wilson Solar Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.